And joining us now in studio, Brian Burke, President and General Manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in, and especially for coming in and talking about what's a difficult topic for you. I want to begin by showing a little bit of Brendan's legacy, and that comes to the You Can Play campaign. So let's just take a little bit a look at that. This is you and your son, Patrick.
If you can skate, you can skate.
If you can score,
you can score. If you can fight, you can fight.
I'm Brian Burke of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And I'm Patrick Burke of the Philadelphia Flyers. My brother Brendan fought for tolerance, equality, and gay rights in sports. His message was simple. If you can play, you can play.
If you can play,
you can play.
If you can play,
you can play.
Okay, Brian, tell me a little bit more about You Can Play.
Well, this is Patrick's mission. I'm in the video, but really my role in this thing has been just to help him get some players to do it. It's to stop gay young men from dropping out of team sports. We find that gay women don't drop out, but the homophobic environment, especially in contact sports, becomes difficult for gay young men, and they tend to drop out of sports. So this is basically saying, if you can play, if you can skate, if you can shoot, and so on, you can be on my team. And the power of having these NHL stars say that, I think it's a small audience that we're going after. It's a real small number of men that will hopefully, save and stay in team sports. But I think the much broader message is, when a Dion Phaneuf says it's okay if you're gay and you're on my team, that's a much broader message to the LGBT community.
Why was it so important for your family to do this? You could have done other things. Why this campaign?
Well, I do other things, but this is important work. I think I say this when I speak to groups and to high schools and stuff. If you look at where women are compared to where they were 20 or 30 years ago, or people of color, the strides they've made, the LGBT community has made great strides. It's far better today for a gay person than it was then. But we haven't gone nearly as far as we need to go, and there's still bias and mistrust and ignorance, and so that's why I think it's really important.
I'm curious, I mean, there's several athletes in them, all of them high profile, very frontline, active hockey players. You mentioned Phaneuf. How's the response to this campaign been from the players themselves?
Wonderful. We have players calling, complaining that they weren't asked. And so the players we asked, we had an almost universal response. We had a couple guys that said no due to scheduling conflicts. But basically, Zdeno Chara, we asked him, he said, absolutely, when are we doing it? And so I think we've got players calling us now from different teams saying, when do I get to do one of these? So I think, that the whole notion of gay athletes in team sports, we know we have gay hockey players. No matter what statistic you accept, it's 10 to 13, 15, whatever expert you want to read, we have had gay players in the National Hockey League. We do now, and we will. We haven't had an out player yet, because it's still an atmosphere where that would be difficult in their minds. But the acceptance that I've seen from the athletes in the NHL is that when we do get that first player to come out and say, I'm gay and I play in the NHL, he'll receive, I think, a far better reception and a better audience than he thinks he will.
Have you heard from any players that are, I don't want to say opposed, but aren't comfortable with this? Maybe you're not the guy that they would go to, but have you heard from any of them?
No, no one turned us down on that basis. Like I said, we had some scheduling issues, and but no one said that, which was really a bright light for us. We expected, and had players said that they wouldn't do it. If a player said to me, no, I'm not comfortable with it, I would never divulge that to anyone anyhow, because I think a player is free to do that. Whatever cause you adopt, it doesn't have to be my cause. But we haven't had that reaction to date.
I want to go back to 2007, and your son Brendan was 19 at the time, I think. And he comes to you and he says, after telling his sisters, he comes to you and says, Dad, I'm gay. What do you say to him?
Well, I wasn't prepared for it, because certainly I'd never seen any indications. His mom thought he was.
And she never had mentioned that to you before that?
But you're not ready for it. It's a shock that it's not something you prepare for. You don't sit there and say, well, what if one of my children says I'm gay? But the beauty of it was, he was such a wonderful kid that, it was just, I hugged him and I said, the best thing is I don't have to take anything back, because my kids were raised in a home where you were not allowed to make derogatory comments about people on the basis of race or sexual orientation or any other bias. And we're told, who are you to judge anybody? So that was the best part. And that's when parents ask me about it, what should they do if their kid says he's gay or their daughter says that she's gay? I tell them is that it'll be a lot easier to build that bridge, even if you have a big heart and you want to reach out to that child and accept them. It's a lot easier if you don't have to rebuild any bridges where you've said things that are hateful or things that are biased.
You had prepared your family, in a sense, to have a welcoming environment, but 2 years later, when Brendan is working with the Miami University hockey team, he decides to come out publicly. What fears did you have about him taking that next step, which is going beyond telling his family?
Well, first off, what had happened was apparently he was on a gay website and some kid came on and wrote how hockey players are homophobic and obnoxious, and Brendan responded and said, no, I'm involved in a college hockey program where it's not like that at all. And this gentleman that he was chatting with online said, well, you should go public with that. And so he said to Patrick, what do you think? And Patrick said, well, if you're going to do it, let's do it big. Let's do it with John Buccigross from ESPN. And Buccigross is a wonderful guy. He did a great job with this. What I said to him is, you're a member of a team. And I said, you have to go to the coach and see if he wants this distraction mid-season, because it happened in the middle of the year. And I said, he has no right to tell you not to come out publicly, but he has a right to ask you to do it at the end of the season. So Rico Blasi was the coach at Miami, and he said, absolutely not. If you want to come out publicly, do it. We all support you. So he told his teammates and then came out publicly. He got nothing but great response from his teammates. He was the student manager at Miami, and he got a great response from his teammates. The only thing I cautioned him was, Matthew Shepard was a young man who was beaten to death in the Western United States because he was gay. And I said to him, look, it's a big school. Miami's a big school. There's probably some, right-wing nuts out there. Just keep your head on a swivel for a while. Don't go anywhere alone. Be careful if you're out late. And that's pretty sad, I think, and pretty sick that you've got to give your kid that warning. And Brendan was a big kid. He was 6'4". He was a kid who could take care of himself. But I think it's pretty sad commentary that I felt I had to add that, admonition to him to be careful for a while.
Well, the thing is that Brendan had this, warm environment within his own family and within his hockey family. But the reality, as you well know, is that we haven't yet seen an active NHL player come out and say, I'm gay. And I guess as you do all this work, I'm sure you wonder this as well, but when will we?
Well, for people that care about these things, the sooner the better, because then that opens the door for someone else. I mean, if you talk to, and I get these heart-wrenching letters from young gay people that say, my dad's not like you, I can't come out. I get letters from parents, your stance has given me the courage to accept my child. I think the sooner the better, because I think that'll make life better for a lot of people that are tormented by this whole issue of whether to come out or not. And I think that player, as I said earlier, I think that player will find that he is welcomed and accepted at a far greater level than he expects that he would be.
Soon, but not soon enough for you. But are we talking, you think, in a year? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, we've had gay athletes come out in individual sports, not in team sports so much, and not in contact sports where the environment is, there's no gay NFL players have come out. That environment in a full contact sport is so macho and so, I think it's a real hard bridge for a young man to cross. But it can't come soon enough in my mind because of the impact it will have, not just on any other gay athletes that feel empowered now to come out, but also the message to the younger generation that, hey, I'm an NFL player and I'm gay, I'm an NHL player and I'm gay. I think that, that speaks volumes more than I can talk about it. There is, arguably the toughest rugby player in the world came out. He's Welsh. So we have had a pioneer. We have had a guy with courage that plays a full contact sport that said, I'm gay, and was accepted. And that day will come for us.
Not to disparage rugby, but it isn't hockey and it isn't North America's game. And that brings me to the NHL. You might be ready for it. You say others are ready for it. Is the league ready for it?
Yes. I mean,
what makes you say that?
Well, this whole program, before we started, we went to the NHL and said, does this have your support? Gary Bettman was like, absolutely. He knew Brendan. And he was like, absolutely. That day can't come soon enough. So it's no pushback at all. The teams, we went through to get to the players. I don't have access to a player on the Boston Bruins cell phone number. I can't call Zdeno Chara. I had to go through the general manager, Peter Chiarelli. I called Peter Chiarelli. He said, absolutely, we support it. Let me get you a couple guys. So I do think there is acceptance. And, And again, it's hard to see. Much of what gay athletes experience, I think, is habitual more than hateful. Some of the words to call someone a homo or a faggot, these are things that you learn to do when you're 12 and someone hits you from behind. That's the insult you reach for in your pocket. And there's some other multisyllabic words that probably aren't appropriate for this show. But that's what a hockey player reaches for. I don't think he's making a judgment about the other player's sexuality at all. I think it's habit. But it's still hateful and it still has to go.
I think some people would say you're being a bit of an apologist, though, when you say things like that. That is just habit, that they don't mean anything by what they're saying. These aren't young children, NHL players. Some are teenagers, mostly in their 20s. They're kids and adults that should really know better by now, shouldn't they?
Correct. But if they've come up in a system where they were never told not to do it, and it was part of the culture, they're going to do it. Some of the first words, unfortunately, when we bring European players over, are words that you'd never say at the dinner table. Some homophobic, some just obnoxious, but that's the vocabulary of a hockey player and a football player. I've spent time with NFL teams, so I'm not being an apologist at all. I am defending, to an extent, what I believe is, I used that terminology when I was playing in the American Hockey League. We all did. And I never once felt that the guy, if I used that term, that I felt he was gay. In fact, I was pretty sure back then he wasn't. But it was habitual. It doesn't change the fact that it's hateful, it's hurtful, and it has to stop. It's got to go. I'm just saying that I don't think if you go just on the language and the habits of NHL players, you'd say, oh, it's a homophobic sport, they'll never accept a gay player. I don't think the culture and the environment is that hateful as much as we've got habitual things. Miami of Ohio eliminated homophobic slurs from their program. They said they're not acceptable here.
What's the penalty?
I think a suspension. So this is Rico Blasi, who's, he's from this area, a wonderful young man, great coach, but it's an enlightened culture there where there's, the English language is unlimited in breadth and depth. There are a lot of ways to insult a guy without a homophobic slur. There are lots of wonderful multisyllabic words that have nothing to do with sexual orientation.
Give me a sense of what we always hear about locker rooms in professional sports, what it's like for guys who play hockey. But if there were a gay player who came out today, what would it be like for him?
Well, I don't know. I'm not gay, and I don't play hockey anymore. I do beer league, but my guess is that the hardest part would be telling your teammates. I think the easiest part would be after that, because I think what would happen is what happened. Like Tommy Wingles is a player that played at Miami, plays for the San Jose Sharks now. Great kid, wonderful young man. When Brendan told the team, he came right over to him and said, that's great, that's wonderful. We love having you here, it doesn't change a thing. So I think that would be the reaction from most players. I really believe that.
You think they'd rally around and say, I don't care, let's move on and play hockey?
Yes, I do. You know what the great thing about being a teammate is? There really are no lines of color in a dressing room. So there shouldn't be any lines along sexual orientation either. If you're my teammate, I don't care what color you are if you can help me win hockey games. I don't care what religion you are if you can help me win hockey games. I don't care what church you go to. If I get in a fight and I know that you'll jump in if you're needed. That, to me, that's the test. That's how we measure each other. That's how we accept teammates, is what they can contribute. And never once did any of that ever talk about, okay, he can't help us because he's Chinese. He can't help us because he's Muslim. I don't think it'll ever enter the discussion. If the guy can play, he can't help us because he's gay.
You brought up the issue of color. And we all remember last summer when Wayne Simmons playing in London, Ontario, black player, and a fan threw a banana peel on the ice. Obviously a very derogatory thing to do. We know that discrimination, it might not exist amongst players, but to that extent, but we know it exists in the stands. So how do you think fans would respond to an openly NHL player?
Well, you've got a full spectrum in society. You've got people with high IQs and you've got people with low IQs. You've got people who are enlightened and you've got people who are biased. You've got mistrust and suspicion. You can live your whole life and never interact with the gay community. I mean, that was my life before my son. And I'm better for the change. My circles, I didn't interact with anyone. I knew a few gay people, but my test is if you're a friend of mine, then you've eaten at my house or you've come to my house for a drink. And I never intersected with the gay community. And that's a large part of the population in Canada will live their lives and not intersect with that community.
Or at least not know they're interacting with
for
the gay
sure,
person.
the hidden part of it. Like when Brendan came out, it's amazing to me the number of people who reached out to me that I knew close to me and said, I never told you, but my brother's gay, or my sister's gay, or my aunt was gay. So it's not that people aren't touched by it, but some people ignore that. So we're going to have poor reactions from some fans. We're going to have dumb comments from some fans, just like this moron who threw the banana peel on the ice in London. That we're going to have that. We expect it. We accept it. It doesn't mean that when we accept it's going to happen. We don't accept the behavior. It doesn't mean that it's still not moving forward. As I tell people, societal change is a gradual thing. You're not going to change centuries of suspicion and mistrust in 10 years. You're not going to change it in 20 years. Some walls have to crumble. Some doors get kicked in. You know, Rosa Parks gets on a bus, a door gets kicked in. Some other walls crumble, and this one is crumbling quickly. Brendan was way better off being a gay young male in this era than he would have been 20 years ago. I tell this when I speak at high schools. My high school was 3,000 people, 3 grades. In Minnesota, you only go to high school for 10, 11, 12. 3,000 people, huge, 1,000 in each class, no gay people. And of course there were gay people. But back then, you were really at risk if you came out. And so no one came out. And there was this underground, hidden community. It is so much better now for gay people than it was, but it's not close to what it needs to be.
I want to ask you about another aspect of the game, and that, of course, is the business side. Marketing crucial to professional sports, to hockey. If a Sidney Crosby was gay and came out publicly, I mean, what effect would that have on the marketing end of the game?
I don't know. My guess is that there are companies, there are corporations that have made proper treatment of the LGBT community cornerstones of what they do. IBM is famous for it. They're famous for it. It's a wonderful company in terms of how they've said way back, 25 years ago, this community is an important part of what we do. It's an important part of what we want to be. We want to embrace this community. So that's a company that would say, hey, let's sign them up. There would be other companies that would be probably to the right of that. I don't know. But I know there would be, like JetBlue is an airline in the US that has embraced the LGBT community. IBM, others, Toronto Dominion Bank. And so to me, I think that this athlete would find, hey, there are some companies that actually respect that and would like to, boast about it. Like say, this is part of what we do. This is part of our DNA.
Hockey, compared to even other sports, I mean, it's a real masculine culture. You've got to be tough. You got to be big. You've got to be masculine. You've got to have plenty of endurance. Do you think that those attributes come with an inherently anti-gay bias?
No, I don't think so. I think my view of this is that your sexual orientation is not something you choose. Like when I talked to Brendan about it, he said, Dad, would I choose to be part of a minority and go to the prom in high school and fake it with a girl, and ask a girl if she goes my date and try and fit in with the guys? Would I choose to be part of a minority if I didn't have to be? And a minority that's mistrusted and hated by a significant percentage of the population. No, it's not something you choose. And to me, you can't say, well, in this spectrum, we're not going to find guys that can do these things. The rugby player proves that's wrong. We had an former NBA player that came out. You can't question his masculinity, I don't think, or those other attributes. So no, I don't think it has any bearing whatsoever.
We do hear, not just in hockey, you hear it on the street all the time. Things like people say, like, man up, stop being a sissy. Other homophobic slurs, which I'm not going to repeat here, which really questions someone's masculinity, if you will. Do you think our current concept of what it is to be a man has some, homophobic connotations to it?
Well, I don't like the man up ads. And I know Bud Light has not been attacked by the LGBT community because of their work in the LGBT community. You might find the ad offensive, I do. But they do a lot of other really important work within the community, so they kind of got a pass on that, is my understanding. Because I asked about it right away. I'm like, what is that? But all of these things, the man up, yeah, I find it offensive. I do. And but again, you can't expect a 180 on this stuff. You can't, just because Brian Burke comes out and says we've got to be more enlightened and tolerant, who am I? It's one voice, right? It's not going to change overnight, and I don't expect it to change overnight. And I view it as work that's going to continue long beyond I'm doing it, but I think it's important work.
Do we need an NHL player to shift the culture, much like how it changed the behavior for Brennan's teammates and others at the University of Miami?
Well, I think the change is well underway. The generation that, like Brennan's generation, I don't think they draw those lines. You know, I really don't. Like my son Patrick, there's no homophobia in his makeup at all. There never was. Not long before his brother said he was gay. I think it's the older generation, my generation, and certain segments of the population that need to change, and that's going to have to be gradual change. You can't expect that to happen overnight.
So the onus is on your generation.
Yes.
What about coaches who coach young kids? I mean, this sort of hockey culture doesn't come when you make it in the NHL. It's bred from the time you're a little kid out on the ice. I mean, is that the level that we need to start this conversation at?
Yeah, I think so. But to me, I don't want to change how we teach hockey in our country either. I'd like to see, you know, like I'm a big proponent of the contact style of hockey, the North American style of hockey. I don't want to change that. I think you can, you know, like I say, in my mind, the notion that you can't be a hard-nosed guy that plays a violent sport if you're gay, that's silly to me. So without changing anything else we do, I think we just eliminate the homophobic language, encourage kids to stay in team sports, not turn away from team sports. Brendan did not play his senior year in high school. He was a goaltender, not a very good one, but would have been the second or third goalie on the team. And he told me he quit playing because he didn't think he'd play very much. So he played for a different team. He played for the team in the town that he lived in Boston, outside of Boston. And only later he told me it was because of the homophobic atmosphere in the dressing room. So that's got to change. But I don't want to change anything we do in hockey as far as how we prepare these kids.
You're also involved with some work with MyGSA, which is my.ca, which is My Gay Straight Alliance. Tell me about that.
Well, the Gay Straight Alliance is, it's funny, we've got a battle going on over this now with this wonderful legislation that's pending. And I really applaud the people that drafted this and are pushing it. I really applaud what it says, the message that it says. But to me, the Gay Straight Alliance, what we find is, and I'm involved with the Canadian Safe School Network, so let me make just two plugs. If people want to help, PFLAG is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gay, wonderful support group, do great work, and the Canadian Safe Schools Network. So if someone's watching this and say, how can I help this community? Here's how you can help. The Gay Straight Alliance is a notion that we're going to have someone who's straight in the population form an alliance with a gay student and basically say you're okay, and it basically empowers that kid and protects that kid. And the bullying and the notion, the things that these kids go through, it's awful. So especially it's worse, in my mind it's worse. The experts might argue it's not. I think it's worse for boys. The notion that a straight person would say, this is my ally and he's important to me and I'm going to make sure that he doesn't get bullied and I'm going to make sure he makes it through high school. I think it's really important and I think it's absolutely wonderful. And that's proof to me that that generation gets it, where they'd say, I'm fine being an ally to a gay person. That's great.
What do you say to the critics who say, you know, we can teach these values without using the word gay?
To me, the hang-up isn't over the language. To me, if that's the way you want to phrase it, to me it's masking that you don't, it's an issue that you don't want to deal with head on. The best way, the experts will tell you, I'm not an expert, but the experts will tell you the best way to make sure a kid feels safe in school and to make sure a kid feels valuable. The cost to society of these things, the suicides are the tip of the iceberg. The cost to society in learning, lagging, students that lag behind in learning because they're not confident in the classroom, addiction issues that come later, depression, the cost to society is tremendous. And the suicides, as tragic as they are really only a symptom of a much larger problem. It's like an iceberg. You see the iceberg, but underwater it's massive. You only see the part that's above the surface. That's what bullying is. The suicide issue is only the tip of the iceberg. Gay Straight Alliance is a wonderful way to combat that issue.
If we're reaching out to people at a younger age, do you expect that the first gay NHL player will actually have come out before they get into the NHL?
I don't know, and I don't care. You know, like to me, that's going to be an important watershed moment for the LGBT community and for society at large. And I don't care if it's an NHL player. To me, if it's an NFL player, an NBA player, whatever, to me, that's going to be the step where society, in my mind, has finally matured on this issue to a point where acceptance is truly acceptance. You know, people talk about tolerance. I'm not interested in tolerance. You know, you tolerate cats or rain. You know, you tolerate annoying things. Acceptance is different. Saying that this person is important and has the same value as any other person, that's where we have to get to, and we're not even close to that.
Brian Burke, thank you for coming in. I know your work on this front will continue. You were just telling me before we started this that you have a busy summer ahead of you on the negotiating front, so take some time for yourself. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for, I think it's a really important issue. Thanks for giving it this much time.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.